Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Coincast, where today I am joined by Michael from Boxmining, or aka Boxmining. I'm your host, Zach, where today we're going to be talking a little bit about Boxmining's channel, how he started it, how he got to where he is now, and then we're going to be talking about his opinions on the market. So welcome, Boxmining, or Michael.
Hey, Zach, how's it going? Thank you so much for inviting me on this channel. It's great to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's great to eventually meet you, and we're going to be talking about some interesting topics today. Do you want to just give an introduction to yourself and like Boxmining channel and where you are currently?
Sure. So my channel is really much a community-based channel. So I kind of started crypto in 2012. Without going into boring details, I was mining back then, and one of the things that was lacking in 2012 was what really understanding of where the whole space is going and a community. So unfortunately, I made a ton of mistakes. So in 2017, I made a YouTube channel kind of sharing a lot of the mistakes I made. So that included, putting my cryptocurrencies on an exchange named MT Gox. We also selling it too early. Also just not really understanding what the space is really about. So I started a YouTube channel, and it was just like a really great way to communicate with everyone. Just the way that the technology brings us all together, and then we can have a lot of feedback, and the community really helped me understand what the meaning of this whole cryptocurrency space is. So since then, my channel's grown beyond just simple mining. It's now talking about everything in cryptocurrencies, blockchain related. So going from all this crazy stuff with exchanges, trade volumes, looking at different coins, technologies. That's what box mining is really about right now.
Yeah, cool. So, is that really the reason why you wanted to start the channel, to create that community around mining to start with, and then with crypto as a whole?
Yeah, so very much initial just teaching people how to mine. And it's great, right? Like being a big gamer in 2012, mining was a great way to make a little bit of side money. So back in the day, even just having 3 computers on, just 3 gaming grade computers, I actually mined 0.3 Bitcoin a day. I actually get emails. Like I kept those old emails. I'm like, dude, fuck, man, 0.3 Bitcoin a day. That was how much I was making. But back in the day, it wasn't that much, right? Back in the day, it was just $10 per Bitcoin. So it's like $3, and even my wife's friends just were joking. They're like, "Hey, you could probably make more money picking up cans from the street," but but now now they're all regretting.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So you originally got into mining back then. What really happened to all those Bitcoins then? Did you manage to sell them at a prime time, or?
No, that's one of the mistakes I made. So when Bitcoin pumped from $10 to $15, I was like, dude, there's no way something can pump 50% in the space of 2 days. I'm like, this must be unsustainable. I'm gonna cash out. So I dumped a lot of that. Obviously, I kind of fell into all the new mistakes as well at that time. There was something called Insta Wallet. Left a lot of crypto in there, and that went kaput. Also lost a lot of Bitcoin on various hard drives. Like I said, I sold them on MT Gox, traded them, and then MT Gox imploded on itself. The CEO claimed he was hacked. It's been 5 years now, and no one's been able to claim any money from them. So that's the journey. That's a story of my life. Lots of mistakes made in crypto, but now that the community formed, it really helped us all understand, okay, exchanges are not safe places to store crypto. Kind of gave me a whole new outlook on this whole why Bitcoin needs to exist, why there needs to be an alternative to banks, and that's kind of where we're kind of positioned right now.
Yeah, cool. So so with that, with your channel, you're now around what, 200,000 subscribers?
Yeah.
And it's taken you about 2 years to get to 200,000 subscribers. That's pretty crazy growth, is it? Have you got any secret to that, or are you just doing videos and smashing it?
So the growth has been like crazy. So I started making videos right before the bull run actually, so that was great. So about that time, no one was talking about crypto, and it was just like it was still nerd money at that time. And then it suddenly took off. So like everyone was trying to figure out what this whole face space is. And I think one of the core things about the channel was also explaining the technology, not just going into what's hyped up right now, but rather, okay, what is the purpose of this? And I think it was kind of interesting and fun to explain things in kind of a more reachable level. So at that time, I was kind of like, my job at that time was in game development, and I was kind of in the middle of everyone. I was between the artists and the engineers. So I could kind of understood the technology. I had to explain it to artists. So that was kind of like my secret sauce, right? That the same kind of like understanding tech, but breaking it down into kind of ways that normal average people can make it accessible and reachable. So that was kind of like, I guess, my secret sauce to success, just really understanding the technology and being able to kind of express it and put analogies that I guess at that time no one really cared about for analogies. People were either super, in detail, in depth, and there was no middle ground into just having a foundation to understand what, these terms like proof of work, what a UTXO transaction is. Like these things are so core, but no one really understands it.
Yeah, so that's a really important thing to do as well, because in order to get people into the space, which is what the space needs, we need people to be able to understand it. So I think you doing that has really sort of allowed a lot of people to get into the space. I know when I first got into the space, being explained the technology was the main thing that I needed to happen. So it's really great that you do that. So,
and it's good that you're interested in that, because like honestly, in this space there's a lot of people who talk about when's the next pump and when's the next X thing going up, how do you make money fast. There's no such thing as fast money. The only way that you can really win in this space is by understanding what it is, so the fundamentals are solid, and then you can add some crazy TA on that if you like. Not my personal cup of tea, but you must be able to at least fundamentally explain it so you don't get caught up in the hype wave.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, we've seen plenty of projects that have had huge hype behind them just fail, or projects that have got really good technology actually come through and be powerful. Even, for example, Binance Coin in this bear market, it's not dropped anywhere near any of the other coins because it's got such a strong technology and, well, a use case behind it, really.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing you brought up, Binance Coin, because Binance Coin, the fact that it's around isn't just powered by the tech, right?
Yeah.
Every time Binance reaches some sort of FUD, it's CZ who comes out and like spins it the other way. So you got to give it to them for that. There's so many FUD waves for Binance. For example, they shut down for a while. There was a crash. Then there was this FUD about listing, and then there was this FUD about them copying everything. After every various event, CZ threw in a little gift, be it Binance charity or be it the Binance main chain, the Binance chain, and the Binance Dex. So it was kind of funny that I think Binance Coin is example of good and bad in the space. The fact that it wasn't just the core technology; it was added features that made the coin strong. It's interesting. I mean, think about it. They added voting features. They added even more discounts. They added a lot of possibly, they probably talking about staking right now. But by adding all these features there, they try to keep the price up. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's not just the tech. It's also about how the team manages and responds to events.
Of course, yeah, definitely. So what's it like now being, if we just segue a little bit back to yourself, like what's it like coming from 2017 to now being a public figure in the space and being sort of quite a well-known figure across the whole space?
Kind of weird, actually. I never really intended to be like well-known in the space or whatnot. But I think it's great to be able to speak to so many different people. I mean, this opportunity really gave me a lot of options to either interview CEOs of various projects, which would be much harder. It'd be much harder to say research Cardano or research anything, even just like VeChain or any other project or engine project, without actually be in the position I am in. So I'm really grateful of the opportunity. Got to thank everyone for that. And I just want to do better in this space. Just provide more information to people. That's kind of the more key objective right now.
Yeah, of course. And that's, as we said before, a really important job to be able to get people into the space as a whole. So what's it been like during the bear market? Well, as Shash said on the last podcast, he said, this isn't the bear market, this is the market. But I mean, everyone else sort of sees it as the bear market. So what's it been like being a creator through the bull market and then onto this current dip in the market that we see now?
Yeah, so the market's been quite brutal. So, I've survived, technically survived through a few of these boom bust cycles, but none of them really hit me as much because I wasn't very involved on a daily basis in crypto back in the so from 2012 onwards. During those crashes, I barely remember it. So this is the first time I kind of like was so deeply involved, and it really has an emotional toll. I think a lot of people, they ignore the fact that it's emotionally taxing, especially if you're invested into crypto, and to see essentially 90% of that value dissipate into thin air. Obviously that kind of sucks, and acknowledging that, and then of course seeing the good side of everything as well. So one thing that we saw in the bull market was that it was just unsustainable growth. You saw a lot of stupid crap happen. For example, in January of 2018, the coins that pumped were the coins that had lesser value. So it's just like there was a huge amount of unit bias, which any logical investor shouldn't have. The fact is that people thought, oh, Ripple's like a few cents, so that's gonna be able to pump to a few dollars much more easily. But the market cap is more important. So all of a sudden right now in the bear market, people are starting to learn, okay, look, this is how to kind of evaluate it. We still don't have a perfect system for evaluating what the price of all these crazy ass currencies are. But at least at this point, if you go to any conference, if you talk to anybody, they understand the technology. Back in the bull market, dude, I was talking to various funds, and you'll go into detail about how proof of work works and how miners operate, and they'll be like, oh my god, I don't know this. I can't answer any of your questions. And I'm like, dude, you are investing in these blockchain 3.0 projects. You don't even know how Bitcoin works at its core. How do you even invest, right? Like how do you call yourself a professional? And now what we're seeing is that if you ask those questions, very basic questions about mining, that's easy. Everyone can answer that.
Yeah, great. So let's just talk about a little bit about that. About that Ripple thing as well. If we talk about the value that was added at the time that was really not backed up by much. I remember watching a video by someone, I can't remember who it was, and I don't want to name names. It definitely wasn't you or Altcoin Buzz or anything, who was saying that could Ripple get to $100 in the next 5 years or something? And then if you work that out, it would be like the Ripple market cap would have been in the multiple trillions. And I was just sat there like, what's going on here when gold itself across the world's worth 8 trillion? And I mean, I don't hate Ripple a huge amount compared to a lot of people, but when you see stuff like that, you sort of like, this is just taking people who want fast money, like we said before, for a ride, really.
That's insanity, right? I think there's still a lot of confusion still. I think especially with Ripple, the unfortunate fact is like, when I first researched it, I caught this immediately. There's they explicitly try to make the company, the protocol name, the same as a token. So there's actually a big difference between what the XRP is used for and what the protocol is used for. So I guess that's the most interesting thing about the space, that kind of confusion still exists, and there's still a lot of people who want to believe in this fantasy rather than what's actually happening. So I mean, and also you brought up a good question about market cap. I mean, we calculate market cap assuming that everything is liquid, but there's a lot of room to play if portions of the total supply are locked up. And say, for example, we saw Quark Chain, what probably was I would personally say is that was a coin that really killed off the whole secondary market, so to speak. When they launched on Binance with only 3 to 5% circulating supply, which is ridiculous, right? Like basically 97% of their tokens are locked up. So if you inject any sort of capital in there to market make, you're going to pump up the price like crazy. But the problem is what happens when those tokens start unlocking. Once they start unlocking, the supply is going to double, and that demand, unless the demand doubles to keep up with it, the token price will fall. So that's exactly what we saw. The token price just kept dumping and dumping and dumping because, well, more tokens got unlocked, more and more in supply. The demand got less and less because people were scared of this dump. Magic.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. We're seeing so many different projects out there with different opinions and different ways of doing things. I think a lot of what's happening now is a lot of learning from both the consumer, the investor, and a lot of learning from the projects and looking at other projects and thinking, oh, that was not a good way to do that, or that's a great way to do that. Especially one thing that I found kind of interesting, especially watching the ICO craze last year, was a lot of people, uneducated investors, were sort of equating ICO to having equity in a company. And it turns out it's completely different. And you can't compare having equity in a company and having a stock or a share in a company to having some part in an ICO. And I think that's been quite one of the weirder or more dangerous things about the ICO craze that was happening last year.
For sure. I mean, even when you brought up the Binance coin is not equity. I think it's important to stress that. It's used on the decentralized platform. It's used for discounts. It's used for voting, for particular things, community events, but it's not equity. There is a token burn, which I guess confuses things a little bit, but when you own Binance Coin, you don't own a portion of the Binance exchange. So this is something that people don't equate. People think, oh, if Binance is successful, the coin is successful. No, it's not the case. CZ has to actively throw new features onto Binance Coin to make the value go up or add additional kind of functionality to it. You do not, if you own Binance Coin, you do not own any portion of Binance. And Binance, technically, they can say, you know what, we can cut that off at any moment, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and the difference between coins and equity is huge as well. So for your value and equity to go up, you basically need more profits, and that's about it. The company's got more profits than it did last year, therefore your share or your stock's gone up.
Even revenue. I mean, like Amazon historically the revenue goes up, market share goes up. Anything you actually have substantial value. It's just say if the company needs to liquidate, if a company wants to liquidate, they need to liquidate their assets too. So if their assets increase, the shares prices increase, but that's completely not the case for a coin.
Yeah, of course. With coins, it's more just like, is there a bigger user base? Are people trading it? Are people using it? And that's about it. Whereas, it's completely different from equity.
Exactly. And I think I want to throw this in as well. Coin holders have very little say. I mean, if you look at 10x, they started a very dangerous trend for this year, which is that they cut off a major functionality of their pay token. So when 10x did their ICO, the pay token, the functionality was that it would take a portion of the credit card, the card transaction fees would go into and be paid out via smart contract to pay token holders. Obviously, if you listen to that now, this is just a pipe dream because that has a lot of security law ramifications, and obviously there was a problem with that. So the 10x company, they decided to just cut off that functionality altogether, which that kind of gutted the entire token, right? So there's that insanity there, and I think a lot of people still don't realize this. I mean, the way they dealt with it was a little bit smart as well. So they dealt with it in a stealthy fashion where they would drop a new token. So they would drop a new token called the 10x token to all pay token holders, but you must pass KYC first as well. So that means that this new 10x token, also this new 10x token is not traded anywhere, but it has the functionality of the revenue split. It's technically, should be legal ramification, but in some jurisdictions, this could be considered a security token. That's why not exchanges are not listing it. And you can just see like pay token holders that were initially promised this during the token sale, they had no say into whether or not this token split should happen, whether or not they should get it. It's just a big mess, frankly speaking.
So do you think that's a bit indicative of the debate between an open protocol and a centralized system with a cryptocurrency? Like, where do you sort of stand on that debate? Like open protocol Bitcoin versus a centralized company like Binance having control of a token?
It's very different. People confuse these concepts all the time. There is a currency, which is something like Bitcoin, which is very much akin to digital gold, whilst a token is something that you can use for a particular function on a platform. And I think it's important to say that Bitcoin should be decentralized. It should be, it's essentially a currency that no country controls. So Donald Trump can't just call on the phone and call the president of Bitcoin and say, "Hey man, just freeze that account, give me some more." You can't do that, or like the premier of China can't do that either, right? So that's what a currency needs to be. And decentralization is a scale, and Bitcoin is the most decentralized because it's open consensus, so anyone can join. Then it's also got a lot of teams developing for it, so it's probably the one that's the only project that's leaderless. And this is important because you can't have a centralized leader figure there directing or having a huge say. So these properties make Bitcoin a powerful currency, and it's kind of like, if you equate it, it's kind of like the US dollar of cryptocurrencies. It's got the most acceptance worldwide. You can go to any Bitcoin center in any city, major city almost, and you can actively trade Bitcoin to fiat or fiat to Bitcoin. So this is a currency, and it should be decentralized. Then we have these tokens, which are project specific, and we should remember that if you're looking at tokens, then tokens have their own rule, and just applying these words that apply to Bitcoin to it just doesn't work at all. So Binance token, sure, it should be fully under Binance. There's no argument there. It has the bloody name of the project on there. It's centralized as hell. But then why it has value is because, well, the platform does well, or CZ keeps adding features onto it. So I think there's a big confusion that, in this space, everyone's thinking, oh, decentralization good and centralization bad. But it's never as clean cut as that.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. So if we talk about a little bit about Bitcoin, then you named the Lightning Network your number one trend for 2019. Do you want to go into a little bit as why that sort of beat decentralized exchanges, institutional money, securities tokens, and gaming? So do you want to explain a little bit about why you think Lightning Network?
Yeah, well, Bitcoin is the cause of Bitcoin is the sexiest of them all. The fact is that the banking sector is completely controlled by a few entities. They have something called a banking license, and because of that license, that allows them to do pretty much what every other institutional figure would go to jail for. They've been caught money laundering. Look at the HSBC group. Search JP Morgan fine, and you'll just find billions of dollars that they've been fined and caught guilty of, and they don't go to jail for that. And that's kind of messed up. They're basically, the regulations in the banking sectors don't work. And that's why for me personally at Bitcoin, Lightning Network adds this functionality on Bitcoin, which actually makes it usable on a daily basis. And that's why it's the top number one, is because it brings back, okay, look, we now have a system of transferring value that can be done in a very cheap manner. So before Lightning, that's, we've seen Bitcoin prices, Bitcoin transaction costs go up to 100. So before we're saying, oh yeah, that's the price of decentralization, guys. It's that fluctuating fee. That's a price. But now we're finally with the Lightning Network, we're saying, look, we can immediately transfer. And if you actually try it out, it's damn fast. And I think it's also a good way to say, look, we can also scale on a second layer above the first layer. So the whole idea that why Lightning Network works is that it's its own layer, but if anything goes wrong, if there's any problems with those transactions, you can always resort back to Bitcoin and use that as the arbitrator. So kind of you're using the power, you're leveraging the power of the decentralized network, but you're using that as being a judge and a juror, someone who's impartial, someone who's decentralized. It's run by code, so there's no, kind of, Donald Trump or people whispering over, this is how you should arbitrate, make sure that it goes this way. Bitcoin is that kind of ultimate third party that can arbitrate and make Lightning work. So Lightning is a way to send Bitcoin for pretty much nothing.
Yeah, of course. And from my perspective as well, in terms of Bitcoin itself, when I'm out selling or talking to customers and clients, for example, quite often none of them know what cryptocurrency is, but they'll have heard of Bitcoin and they'll have an opinion either way. They'll either be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard it's just criminal money, or I've heard of that. I've heard it's really good. I've heard of that. My daughter has some, or I've heard of that. My husband's into it, or something like that. So, Bitcoin for me, no matter whether it's the best technology or not, no matter whether it continues to scale up or be more scalable in the future, it's still the brand. And I think it will be for quite a while in the space. It's the thing that everyone sort of equates to cryptocurrency. It's like Hoover to the vacuum cleaner, if you understand what I'm saying there.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the brand, but a lot of people view it as a technology, which in a way it is, but it's also more kind of like HTTP or FTP. Everyone's been calling it protocol, and I think there's a lot of merit to that argument where you can write down a certain set of instructions and anyone can build a piece of code that can communicate to this network. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin. A lot of people view it as kind of like a phone. You got to replace your iPhone 6 with an iPhone 7, and a 7 with an 8, and an 8 with an X, and an X with an XS every year. And that's why we need all these altcoins. But that's clearly not the case. Bitcoin has a solid foundation of tested technologies. It's got some of the best cryptographers developing for it. And if it can scale, then it's the most decentralized and usable platform out there. So there's a lot of good stuff to Bitcoin that gets lost when we talk about these altcoins and everything in between. But I think it's very key to remember that there's a lot of value to having a safe accounting system.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. So if we just move slightly on to your favorite sort of projects. I know you're quite fond of Engine, and you often put QR codes up on your videos for Engine coins, and you in fact named gaming as your second big trend for 2019. So what are some of your favorite projects out there, technology wise and probably just project wise?
Yeah, so this is the best question ever. So I definitely looked at a million projects after I got into crypto, and a lot of them are unrelated and they have different ideologies. So, I showed the crap out of Bitcoin, and, I'm trying to debunk a lot of this cloud about blockchain 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. But let me talk about some ideologies. So for gaming, why I think it's going to be successful is that gamers naturally understand this idea of virtual currency. So we've been having something like World of Warcraft Gold or Diablo 2, Stones of Jordan, all these very valuable objects that players spend a lot of time earning, and it becomes a currency for them. But the problem is they don't have full ownership of that. Blizzard technically owns them, and they can suspend your account, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of these issues before. So now finally we get to be able to have items on the blockchain with true item ownership, and that's what kind of Engine built a platform for. So they have a platform for ERC 11 called ERC 1155, which are the non-fungible token standard, and you can basically have items on the blockchain, very much like your CryptoKitties, and make like full-on real video games for that. And then we also have a lot of tradable platforms, and we also have overall this idea of how do we even, if we can leverage that power of tradable items, can we extend that a little bit further? So recently I'm the advisor for the Player project as well, and it's all about how to make money playing video games. What about this amateur esports tournaments? Can we capture value by having players teaching each other how to play video games? Now they can make a living playing video games. So I feel like gamers, once this technology is laid out for them, I think they'll just love it. Having true item ownership, being able to make money playing video games, dude. Like this will be a dream for a dream on ramp for new players, new people coming into the cryptocurrency space. Now, another huge project that I'm looking at is VeChain, which is the enterprise application of smart contracts. So what we know is that enterprise, they could be different companies and they don't all trust each other. So what if they can use the blockchain to trust each other? So one of the possible applications is something like, say, supply chain management. When items get shipped in and out of a factory, let's say the shipping company can report that information, and then they can get that company to an audit company. So pretty much you solve this idea of like what enters a factory, what enters shops, where everything goes. And then now auditors can just look at that data and be like, oh my God, boo, 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 boo. They pretty much replace auditors, right? Yeah. So that was like, wow, you can actually do that on a blockchain, and that can be applied in the more enterprise usage space. So that's why I was looking at VeChain. They have two of the most interesting partnerships. DMGL, big auditing firm, PCW. That's pretty huge in terms of auditing too. Massive, So sorry. I couldn't say the words. I always get the next one, PwC. Anyway, that's what makes it powerful, because these are audit firms that said, oh, look, this technology is really valuable. So that's why I feel like these applications could be very useful as well. There's a million of others, I think. Like, just go down the page. The fact that I think we're in a very interesting space. I think there's a lot of potential and of course a lot of pitfalls. So we'll see you next time. What about your favorites? Or what are you do?
Bitcoin as the brand. I'm pretty keen on quite a lot of coins, to be honest. I quite like Dash. The way it's used in quite a few different countries, especially Venezuela, Iran, that sort of thing. I like it as a project. I do like Litecoin as well, actually, just because it's a bit like Bitcoin, but a bit more scalable currently. But I think as we go forward, it may be being replaced by a few others. I do like a lot of small coins. That's the thing. So I like Four, which is a marketplace coin. So they've got sort of a decentralized marketplace like eBay or like Amazon on the blockchain. And it's a masternode coin as well. And I love masternodes. So that's definitely one of my favorites. So there's loads out there. I'm just trying to think about specific ones because I've got so many and I like so many. I mean, Dragon Chain, for example, like that's backed by Disney. So that's one that I like as an investment, basically, because it's backed by Disney, not necessarily because I love the technology. There's just so many out there. But yeah, I do like the sort of the way the blockchain basically removes a lot of middlemen and steps that don't need to be done. For example, you talked about VeChain then, and how it audits sort of factories and manufacturing and all that sort of thing. It also will completely make it transparent who's liable if there's any mess ups, because everything is irrefutable on it. Everything is there, evidenced in the public ledger. So as soon as something goes wrong, you can instantly pinpoint what's gone wrong, and you don't need to have a long drawn out battle with lawyers on both sides saying this is where your client went wrong, or no, this is where your client went wrong. And I think that in the business world will be sort of a massive thing in the future. And I think one thing we've got to remember as well is with these projects, there's so many out there that are first to their space, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the one in the future that will be the one that dominates that industry. There's a lot of projects out there that are completely like, this is completely original. This is the first use case of blockchain in this space. Like Poet, for example, they're trying to put copyright onto blockchain and stuff like that. And I like that idea, but they might not be the one in the future that actually dominates that space. They might have just had that first original idea, and we don't know yet because it's so new. And I find that really interesting.
I think so, and I think it's good and bad, right? Especially with a lot of the smaller projects, it gets very
Yeah.
scary because the amount of the kind of like information asymmetry, basically the fact that a lot of these big funds and big groups know exactly what's happening with these projects, whether it's good, what's bad, or the legal framework is possible. Say,
Yeah.
like, take for example, Poet. Big
Mm.
funds would completely have access to lawyers, and they'll be like, okay, look, can this work, or is this like 30 40 years down the line, right? And if it is 30 40 years down the line, then what's the purpose of making a coin now? That's the scary
Yeah.
part, right? Because a lot of things, especially when it comes to legal framework and
Mm.
getting traditional kind of um, parts of the puzzle adapted to blockchain, that's going to be really hard. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's gonna. I love that excitement. I love that enthusiasm. Obviously the bear market made me a lot more cautious. So I'm like,
Mm.
okay, look, I'm a lot more skeptical. And then
Yeah.
in areas where maybe it's a legal field, I wouldn't really touch that because I'm like, okay, look, unless I have like a team of 4 or 5 lawyers on my side, I don't have the proper skills necessary to deduce that. But what I'm trying to do now is just trying to really research down in depth into particular verticals that I'm very familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that legal framework is key as well, especially, you know, especially in Europe and in America, governments are not the fastest moving entities in the world, and that legal framework that they present will be massively key to which projects survive and which die, I suppose. And then where they're based, of course, they can always move. That's the beauty of crypto. It's borderless. It's worldwide. But of course, where you're based is a massive issue and a massive problem. If then the government then says, actually, there's no legal precedent for this, therefore you can't do it, or we're going to set a legal precedent, but it's anti what you're doing.
Yeah.
So seeing that and seeing regulation across the world is going to be one of the massively important things we see in the next few years, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think this is one of the things I want to add on as well. It's especially if it's a centralized project and they have all these huge giant dreams. We just saw today for my video topic was actually about Bittrex. So Bittrex, they want to jump on the initial exchange offering wagon as well. And
Yeah.
the first project is called Raid. So it's a gaming-based project that was about making a decentralized marketplace for game data. And just 10 hours before the launch of that platform, of the token sale, they had to pull the plug.
Oh no.
Unfortunately, one of Raid's partners disavowed them. Essentially,
Oh.
OP.gg basically said, we do not want to have anything to do with Raid anymore. We don't. We sever all financial ties, all
Mm.
technological ties. This is completely over. And then Bittrex saw that, and they're like, "Oh shit, we gotta pull the IEO, pull that
Mm.
platform from it." So it was kind of interesting looking at that because what would happen if, say, people actually bought that token and then this news came out? I mean,
Yeah.
how many people would have been burnt in that case?
Mm.
And it's all about that due diligence. I think right now in any sort of altcoin section, you got to do that due diligence. You got to make sure. I guess in many senses we're lucky that this happened before the IEO. If it was after
Yeah.
that, man,
Yeah.
dude, that's bad.
Exactly, and that's sort of part of the argument that people have for regulation of the space as well is the fact that if you buy an IPO, you've got all that protection from the government, which I'm for and against in different ways. But when you buy an IPO for a company, you've got that protection. If something major happens during it, or there's some sort of illegal activity, you're probably going to get awarded compensation, or you're going to get
Yeah,
awarded something. Whereas with ICOs, it's just sort of the Wild West, isn't it? It's like
it is,
do your research
it
and
is,
and
uh,
hope.
yeah, exactly. And people don't go to jail if it's not illegal, right? So people
Yeah.
just they in their minds they can just say, oh, look, penalty. The flip side is that I get a lot of money. The flip side is maybe I'll burn my name, and what's that worth, right? So,
Mm.
if there's no jail sentence for people, then they'll do anything they can. And
Yeah.
what we're gonna see, I think, something that's scary that I discovered in the conference scene is that these organized pump and dumps, different names there's different names for them. One of them is a liquidity pool. The Chinese have been doing pretty much controlling the market prices, etc., for a long time in the IPO scene due to a little weaker Chinese regulation in the IPO space. So they have like very, very good, very smart financial firms that can potentially manipulate market prices, doing all that illegal shit, and that's going to come straight into crypto. So
yeah, and market manipulation isn't illegal in the crypto space at all. So, and even if it is in a few countries, there'll be countries where it's not illegal because it's borderless, and I think those are the teething problems that are going to be worked out in the future. So, in light of that, what's your real opinion on, say, regulation in the space, whether we need worldwide regulation put out by the UN or whether we need countrywide regulation per country, or what do you think about all that sort of stuff?
There's two types of projects as well. So just going back to that clarification, if it's a currency, a decentralized currency, regulation doesn't help it at all. So what we see is in China, try to regulate Bitcoin, tried, but you can't regulate it, and you shouldn't be able to. That power of Bitcoin comes from the fact that you can transfer this anywhere in the world without government intervening, and that's important for Bitcoin to function. That's its main power. But for anything that's related to a project, a token, so to speak, that needs like a lot of regulation, because there's so much room for abuse over there. And without people going to jail for doing what they're doing, it's going to turn into the new BitConnect, basically.
Yeah. And we all know how that turned out. So
yeah, we did.
So in terms of that as well, if we talk a little bit about bank coins and JP Morgan coin, Shash on the last podcast, he said that he's not bothered at all by bank coins, but watching some of your videos, I think you'll probably have a different point of view from that.
Actually, it was great. I directly commented on the JP Morgan coin, which is that it kind of validated this whole space and the technology. If JP Morgan invented Bitcoin, it would be a totally different story. But the matter of fact is that they actually copied us, which kind of which actually completely validates this technology, first of all. And then second of all, they're jumping on our bandwagon. So their coin, in terms of being a decentralized store of value, that's never going to be as powerful as Bitcoin. It kind of that's why Bitcoin prices went up after it was announced, basically. It's basically saying, look, bankers are trying to copy us now. Congrats. Your days are numbered. Bye-bye. Have fun.
Yeah, of course. And I think the one issue I see with JPM coin is the fact that if they do make it consumer facing, if they do make it, because they said originally it's just going to be used for our high ticket customers, our B2B customers, or customers transferring huge amounts of money that costs a lot normally, we can reduce those costs using it. But then they've since come out and said, oh, maybe one day we'll make it customer facing. I think the problem that I see with that is the fact that they could then use that sort of like Tether to manipulate the market. And whether that is actually the case or that's their plan, I don't know. But that's the only issue I really see with that.
No, I don't think they can manipulate the market any more than people are manipulating it already. I guess JPM, they have better games to play, but honestly, it's just another stablecoin. And to be honest as well, I think Tether recently they updated their policy as well, which was quite scary. Basically, before they always said that it was 100% backed by fiat. Now it's 100% backed by fiat and potentially some IOUs. So we definitely need a lot better regulation in space. So if JP Morgan coin says, you know what, we can clear up the fiat coin space, let them. I mean, they're kind of joining us on our fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Tether's IOUs, it's Tether's worth $1 billion, their IOUs 900 million or something.
Yeah, exactly.
but yeah, so what do you think in terms of that then? If centralized banks then decide, say, I'm based in the UK, say the Bank of England, which is a centralized bank of the UK, then says we've got a crypto that's the GB pound but crypto version. I personally don't see a huge issue with that as long as they allow you to use Bitcoin and other coins and they don't ban that or over-regulate it. But yeah, what's your opinion on that as well?
I mean, it's been tried many times, right? Venezuela tried it with the petrol. Russian tried it with the crypto ruble. Government coins don't work because they're just fiat. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
they have no value.
Yeah.
It's government issued. They're gonna be able to print it whenever they want. What's the difference between that and holding the GB, like the pound, right? Why don't I just go to the bank then? Just no advantages to that. The whole advantage of Bitcoin, the core, is that it's not controlled by a centralized bank. So
yeah. So I mean, I'm just getting at the fact that I don't see an issue with them trying to do that with the banks, as long as they allow you to still transact with Bitcoin, and transact it in that way with decentralized currencies, rather than, hey, we've got our new cryptocurrency you're not allowed to use anymore. But I don't see them doing that in most countries. That would be a bit of a
and honestly, like China tried to stop Bitcoin and it can't. Like, that's the problem. Like, you can load it up on your phone, and it takes like a kilobyte of information transferred onto a decentralized network for that transaction to occur. And the interesting thing is that banks have also tried to ban Bitcoin transactions. If you talk to a lot of exchanges and OTC desks, they don't actually have, and they don't tell you what banks they use, because they don't want you going to the bank and saying, oh, look, that's a crypto account, go ban that. In fact, I've known a lot of people who actually got banned because they were using crypto on their accounts. The banks claim that this is used for money laundering or whatever, and they don't want to deal with you. So it's already happening. Banks are already trying to fight back, but guess what, guys? Too bad.
I mean, personally, for me as well, like with my company, it's been an absolute nightmare to try and get a bank account open in the UK. And quite ironically, that one of the banks that rejected us was HSBC, on the grounds that they don't deal with digital currencies. When, if you've seen Dirty Money on Netflix, like they've been laundering money for drug cartels for the last 30 years. It's kind of ironic that
they're telling you you're not big enough. You need to launder a little bit more, pass us a little bit more money, and then we'll put you on the legit side, right? You got to be able to transact in trillions. So only Mexican cartels big enough. You're not big enough, buddy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, maybe I should start a drug operation, and then they'll let me have a bank account. So, so if we segue a little bit towards finishing, then we've talked a lot about the market, about what your opinions on the market, your opinions on coins, the JPM coin regulation. What do you think the future is for the market currently? Maybe in the next year, next 5 years. Where do you think it's going?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So everyone wants to know where the price is going, right? So when is the bull market returning? I think that's the question that everyone wants to ask. And I think bull markets return. I think someone pointed us very blatantly when all the people who want to dump, they're either gone or finished dumping or don't exist anymore. And right now we're still in the process of purging that. I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of weak hands shaken out in the next few years. And this is going to be a long few years. I think my personal prediction is that we're gonna see maybe 1 or 2 years, because sometimes they all say the bigger the rise, the larger the fall, right? And we should also time the market to roughly the bear market starting maybe August-ish last year. The reason for this, and not why January, not the all-time high for Bitcoin, is because the ICO market was huge. The ICO market didn't really die until late last year. There was just projects raising on ridiculous evaluations, 50 million, 100 million, and people were just constantly raising that. There were crypto funds constantly investing in them. And now all of a sudden, all those crypto funds that, were meant to be legit, they got their LPs pulling their money out, and suddenly they have to liquidate, sell, cash out everything. And you just have to wait for those funds or those individuals to die out. Just cleanly said, it's once that's been purged, then we can have growth. So what we're going to see is projects struggle right now. I think that's going to be less new funding, old money just going away, or funds dying, and then projects that are worth their salt, they'll be building, and hopefully they'll have enough financial reserves. Most won't. Some will, but the ones that will, they'll survive and become something interesting for the future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the future is bright. It's just, when is that brightness going to arrive? And I feel like at the minute, we have seen, as you said, we've seen a lot of bear market movement, and people sort of, the value that brought monetarily in 2017 wasn't actually really seen in real life. The projects that were getting huge bumps in value weren't providing anything of that value that they were. And I think until we see that, until we catch up that sort of value deficit, then we might still be muddling along at the prices we are now. So, yeah.
Maybe.
So,
I think that value deficit is gonna never be paid back, because unfortunately a lot of these projects have no clue how to interact with the general public. So I think we might have to have another try at having new projects and new products. We don't know. I think it's uncertain. I think there's still a lot of hopeful projects, but fortunately, if you look at the number of DApp users, for example, I mean, come on. Like, I think our Augur was right now it's sitting at like 200. Like 200 people. I mean,
solid. Yeah.
Even with a 100% increase, there'll be 400 people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Legit.
That's what they'll say to the shareholders, though, isn't it? Had a 100% increase last month from 200 to 400.
Oh my god. Yeah.
So yeah. So do you have any big events that you've picked out for 2019 that you're looking forward to in the crypto space, or are you sort of just taking it day by day?
Yeah, so I'm going to GDC, so that's Game Developer Conference. Going back to my roots, being a game developer, I want to catch up there, see what blockchain gaming is, and it's a space that I really want to enlighten people on. I think that's one of the core pillars I want to focus on as being in blockchain gaming. And there's so many shit blockchain gaming projects that I want to just like just like talking about that raid.gg, like instantly got wrecked in the space of a few hours. So there's so many not legit projects out there. I think it's great to just enlighten everyone about what does work, what doesn't work, and clarify that. Later on this year, maybe there's Consensus. I'm not sure if I'm going there yet. Last year, I was super excited for Consensus, actually. And then I realized that it was just too massive to actually form any meaningful conversations with anyone. But, beyond that, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, of course. So what's next for Boxmining then?
What's next? That's a really good question. I really want to focus on this YouTube side. I think lots of education on this side needs to be done. So that gaming stuff, the education stuff, maybe do a course. I think that'll be more interesting, like a lot more detailed. So instead of like YouTube content, we're very surface level, but something like a Udemy course or something that's a little bit deeper, I think it's going to be good. And then after that, who knows? Maybe want to go back to create my video game with blockchain projects. That'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. That's brilliant. So I think that's about everything we've got time for today. That was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks, man. Cheers. I really enjoyed talking with you as well. And hopefully I have you on my channel, and we'll ask you how you started as well. And
cool. Definitely, that'd be great. That'd be brilliant. And if you make sure that if you've watched this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like. And if you've listened to this on Apple Podcasts or on any other podcasting site, make sure you download or like the podcast. That'd be brilliant. And subscribe to the podcast channel. Well, thank you very much for watching and listening, guys. This has been Coincast, over and out.